Back to Miller. Oh my goodness.
Herbert, sidearm sling, and it's a touchdown.
Tyrese Maxey.
Oh, good spin move by Filipowski for the news. Give him 9.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Beef Up Front podcast here on Pick Swap Media. As always, this is your host, Ryan Coyle. Continuing on today with our NFL divisional preview series. We're working through the NFC South now. Today's episode will be on my second place team out of the NFC South, and that is the New Orleans Saints. Recording this on Saturday morning, August 26th. A few hours from now, we will have real football on the TV with Navy and Notre Dame, so you can start to really feel it. It's almost here. NFL season, 2 weeks from tomorrow, will be kicking off. So we're here. We're going to be banging out a bunch more of these previews as we lead up to opening night between the Lions and the Chiefs. But as I said, today's episode will be about the New Orleans Saints, who I finishing 8-9 this year. That's second in the NFC South. I have them going 3-3 in the division. But even under 500, I have them finding their way into the playoffs as the seventh and final team in the NFC with that last wild card spot. I think that just goes to show you how weak the NFC is outside of the top teams where when you look at it, the Eagles, the 49ers, the Cowboys are kind of the big three being talked about right now. After that, it's a complete crapshoot, I think. You can make an argument for pretty much every team, I think, in the NFC to have a chance at going to the playoffs this year, and I would kind of agree with you. So the Saints under 500 still going in the playoffs as a 7 spot, but I do have them, or I do believe they are the most talented team in this division. I am a little worried about the head coach and some depth issues, but we'll get into the offense and defense, breakout player, the coach grade, and then as well as 2 games to watch for this team for this upcoming season. When you look at last season, they went 7-10 overall, 2-4 in the division, so that was tied for second with the Falcons and Bucks. And they had a carousel at the quarterback spot featuring Jameis Winston, Andy Dalton, and Taysom Hill all getting playing time throughout that 7-10 season. So with an upgrade at the quarterback spot, most likely with Derek Carr coming in, they should hypothetically be better. But I'm still in wait-and-see mode with this team, especially with Dennis Allen at the head coaching spot. He hasn't proven to be a legitimate head coach last year, going 7-10. A short stint with the Raiders back 5 to 10 years ago or so. So this is a team where when you have a major question mark at the top there with your head coach, I'm a little hesitant to kind of anoint you as the best team in the division. On paper, I think they're the most talented. They have the most established quarterback, at least resume-wise, during his NFL career. So they have some stuff going for them. I just am a little bit of wait-and-see mode, but I still have them sneaking into the playoffs. They are the betting favorite on DraftKings to win the division at plus 120 this year. So when you look at the offense, we already kind of touched on it. Carousel at the quarterback spot last year. But now I think that they finally have added some stability to the position for the first time since Drew Brees retired, as bringing in Derek Carr via free agency. When he's on and he's playing his best football, he's a borderline top 10 to 12 quarterback. Like I think most people would agree with that when he's playing at his best. But he's been very inconsistent the past few years, and I think that's what kind of led for his departure from the Raiders. He wasn't good enough to keep running it back, and they wanted to kind of try something new out there. But he does step into a solid situation, though, on offense. This is the first time he's away from the Raiders in his career, so it's a new face in a new place. I think it might take some time and some adjustment, but he has when healthy, one of the best 1-2 punches, most likely in the NFC, with Michael Thomas and Chris Olave, and definitely the best 1-2 punch in the division. But that's if Michael Thomas is healthy, and we haven't seen a full Michael Thomas healthy season since 2019, and that's when he went for 149 catches. So if he's able to stay on the field, and then you have a young and upcoming stud in Chris Olave that a lot of people are expecting to be one of the breakout players of the NFL this year, that's as good as a 1-2 punch in the NFC South for sure, and probably one of the best 1-2 punches in the entire NFC. Olave had a really strong rookie year, and I was really encouraged by that just due to that poor quarterback play and the inconsistency at that spot. Went over 1,000 yards receiving in that rookie year, and he's already like an elite level route runner. And I think that's going to be a much welcome skill for Derek Carr, who last year had the opportunity to play with Devontae Adams, most likely, or arguably the best route runner in the entire NFL. So he's used to guys getting open and creating separation from last year. getting a guy like Chris Olave, who's not far off as one of the best route runners, I think, in the NFL already, is certainly going to be a welcome addition for Derek Carr. And if Michael Thomas is able to stay healthy, we'll never see him back to that 149 catch mark. But if he's a guy that is able to go out there and put up 75 to 80 catches this year, go for like 900 to 1,000 yards and 6 or 7 touchdowns alongside a blossoming star in Chris Olave, that's going to be really strong wide receiver play. But when you look at behind those guys, that's where I start to get a little bit worried about this team. And another reason why I don't have them more so towards like a 10-7 record, and I have them at this 8-9 number. But Rashid Shaheed, Keith Kirkwood, and A.T. Perry. Those are the 3 guys behind Olave and Thomas on the depth chart at the receiver spot. So guys that Rashid Shaheed has had some moments. Keith Kirkwood had a few moments last year. A.T. Perry, he's a 6th-round rookie from this past draft. If Olave or Thomas is forced to miss time and these guys are forced to step up, we're kind of back to square one with the Saints offense again. I don't care that Derek Carr is there. He's not good enough, I think, to elevate some of these receivers. So they need those two to stay healthy, or this team could be in the market potentially to go out and acquire a receiver depending on the success of their season if one of those guys goes down. At tight end, Juwan Johnson, he's shown some flashes. He's been a really nice red zone target the past few years. And then they did go out and bring in Foster Moreau. He is a pretty solid backup tight end as well. And Taysom Hill, the Swiss Army knife, is still on this team. I still expect them to find ways to use him, whether he's at tight end going out for passes, he's running quarterback power, maybe playing a little bit quarterback in the red zone from time to time. Remains to be seen what his role will be of this team this year, but we're sure to see him out on the field making some plays at some point. And then the running back room, it's being a little bit overshadowed right now by the Alvin Kamara suspension. He'll be out for the first 3 games of the year. But when he's back, this is going to be one of, if not, I think the strongest running back room with all the 3 guys healthy in the entire NFC. I think this is a very good group, and they're running behind a really good offensive line, which we'll get into in a second. I do think it is kind of crazy, though, looking at Alvin Kamara's stats. I know he's used as a receiver a lot, and they throw him a lot of passes, but he's never ran for over 1,000 yards in his NFL career, and he's going into year 7 in the league, I believe. So that's a pretty wild stat to me, but he still went on the field. He's another guy that has struggled to stay healthy and be able to play all 17 games. Maybe this little 3-game suspension gives him that opportunity to stay fresher down the stretch. Who knows? But he's, when healthy, one of the best weapons in the entire NFL. And then they did go out and bring in a downhill kind of power running back in Jamal Williams. He led the league in rushing touchdowns last year. So that's a strong 1-2 punch there in the backfield. And then they brought in rookie running back out of TCU, Kendre Miller, who was one of my favorite backs in all of college football last year. I think he's going to be an explosive guy too. And if he's given an increased role while Alvin Kamara's out, I expect him to really take that and run with it. So I really like that backfield, and I think that the Saints should have some optimism with that group. And then the best part of this offense is up front on the offensive line. It's probably a top 5 group, definitely top 10, but they do need second-year left tackle Trevor Penning to step up. He had a really up-and-down year last year in his rookie season, a lot of penalties. They're counting on him because across the board on that offensive line, it's a really strong group, and they should be able to give Derek Carr plenty of time to throw. If Thomas and Olave stay healthy, that there should be a lot of success there. And then as I was touched on with the running game, they should be really good there too. So this is a group that I'm really optimistic about, but I am worried about that depth at receiver. Your most important offensive lineman, arguably, in your left tackle, and Trevor Penning's a question mark. And then what does Derek Carr look like at a new spot at this stage of his career? He's not a young guy. He's been in the league, I believe, for over a decade now. So it's kind of a put up or shut up time for him. If he wants to be potentially like a Hall of Fame type player one day, he has to go out there and he has to win a Super Bowl with this Saints team. And I think out of the NFC, you can't really rule anything out. I'm not saying that this Saints team is a Super Bowl contender, but if things shake their way in arguably the worst division in the NFL, in the NFC South, could be a team that finds their way to 11-6, 12-5 if everything shakes right for them and you're getting a home playoff game there, maybe the 2 seed, and who knows once you get into the playoffs. But Derek Carr has put up some really good stats over the years. He just doesn't have any playoff success really to back it up. So big question marks on this offense, but if all things shake right for them, they could be one of the better groups in the entire NFL, I think. Then you go to the defense, a little bit more worried about this group, but Dennis Allen, supposedly a defensive guy. Hopefully he can kind of cook some stuff up and be creative to help out this team. But Starting up front on the defensive line, they're anchored by Cam Jordan, who entering year 13, you have to kind of worry. I think at some point that he's going to start to take a step back a little bit, and his game might start to decline. But coming off a really strong year last year, an 8.5 sack season. But outside of him, this is a group with a lot of unproven guys up front. They lost Omanyata, I believe is what his last name is. Their defensive tackle, he went over to the division rival Falcons. But the Saints did make two really nice picks in the draft for this defensive line that I like. Brian Bresee out of Clemson, the former #1 overall recruit out of high school. He had an up and down college career due to some health stuff. But if he's fully healthy, he's a game changer up front. He was the #1 recruit in the country for a reason, was a big-time key contributor at Clemson early in his career before he battled some injuries. And then probably my personal favorite defensive player out of the draft last year, Isaiah Foskey out of Notre Dame. Every time you watch Notre Dame, this guy was popping off the page. Not the most gifted athlete. He's not going to be some crazy freak 15, 16 sack guy, but he's a guy I think can be a double-digit sack player in the NFL and really play well against the run. Just is always playing hard, and I'm really, really interested to see his translation over to the NFL. I think he could be a really nice player, but those are two rookies that you're going to be counting on up front early in their career. I'm not really sure how much we can expect out of them, but still, that's a nice 1-2 punch, I think, going forward to build around and kind of the transition period from when Cam Jordan eventually does step away from the game. Look at the linebacker group. It's pretty solid, most notably because it's held down by Demario Davis, one of the best in the league. At his position, he is a very good sideline linebacker. He's able to get all the calls in on defense. He's the leader of that defense there with Cam Jordan. And then the secondary, the strongest part of this team, Marshawn Lattimore, one of the best corners in the NFL, cornerback 1, holding it down there. Corner CB2 is a bit of a question mark still, I think, on this team. I think it's a spot that's up for grabs still. And then the nickel spot by Bradley Roby, at the nickel spot. That is a pretty solid nickel corner. He's had some good success in the NFL. So then you go all the way to the back of the defense with your safeties in Tyrann Mathieu and Marcus May, one of the better 1-2 safety punches in the entire league. So secondary is probably the strength of this defense. Worried about up front, but I think there's some potential there if some of these young guys are able to acclimate themselves to the NFL level. My coach grade, I'm going to give Dennis Allen a C-. I think he actually might be like the worst head coach in the NFL. Him or Matt Eberflus, neither guy I'm a fan of. I have no faith in Dennis Allen. I think this team, talent-wise on paper, should be closer to that like 10-7 mark, not the 8-9 I have them projected at. But the main reason I think that's holding me back, we talked about some of the depth on the offense and whether Derek Carr can be a top NFC quarterback this year in a new spot with the Saints. But it's mainly Dennis Allen. He's holding me back from really anointing this team to the best team in the NFC South this season. My breakout player for this New Orleans Saints team, I'm going to go with wide receiver Chris Olave. In his rookie year out of Ohio State, he had 72 catches for 1,042 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns. I think this year he's going to have much better quarterback play with Derek Carr, and we could see him put up a season stat line of about 90 catches for 1,200 to 1,300 yards and like 7 to 8 touchdowns. An elite route runner already at this stage of his career. I'm excited to see him in year 2 and the jump that he makes. And I love his over for his receiving yards, sitting at 1,025 receiving yards, I believe. I love that over there. I think he's going to be the featured part of this offense in the passing game. And then finally, 2 games to watch for this New Orleans Saints team. We're going to have Week 10 at the Vikings. I have these 2 teams kind of neck and neck. I have both of them finishing at 8-9, so that one could maybe be like a tiebreaker to see who finds their way into the playoffs. But talent-wise, I think these 2 teams are pretty comparable, especially at the quarterback spot, Derek Carr and Kirk Cousins. They're like both good enough to get you there in playoff contention, but I don't think either ever get you over the top. So that's like the game of the mediocre quarterback, the average quarterback. So I think that's going to be a good battle, potential, like I said, wild card teams in there. And then Week 18 at home versus the Falcons, last game of the season. I think that could potentially be for the division title. As I said earlier, I have the Falcons winning the division, but I have them going 8-9, so that they just found their way in over some tiebreaker scenarios. But I think that game could be down the stretch for the division title. So that'll do it for this episode of the Beef Upfront podcast, bringing down the New Orleans Saints. Kickoff is right around the corner. Can't be more excited for football season coming up. But as always, thank you everyone for listening. Please like, subscribe, and we'll talk soon.